Oh, Rockford Files. I used to love that show. How many times, we talk about people getting concussed in football. How many times did Jim Rockford get concussed in that show? Well, I mean, fictionally, of course. But the bad guys would always haul out, in the old movies and television early days, bad guys would always take the pistol grip and whack a guy over the head and knock him out, which, of course, in reality probably wouldn't work very often. Just as Jim Rockford would say, ow, that hurt. Of course it would, but it wouldn't necessarily take you down for the count. 834, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Want to tell you about our friends at High Desert Meat Processing this morning, where they process one animal at a time. What you bring in is exactly what you're going to get back in that situation. Darren Van Horn, the owner of High Desert Meat Processing, has been doing this well over 30 years right here in Twin Falls. You can visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook and read reviews of other customers, or give High Desert Meat Processing a telephone call for all of your wild game and domestic processing needs, 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing gets shipped out. Specialty meats, jerky, pepperoni, salami, summer sausage, kielbasa, breakfast sausage, brats, Polish dogs. By now, my mouth is always watering when I read this section. Of course, hot dogs and much more. USDA approved. Darren works closely with local beef growers and their programs to ensure quality meat. 734-9949. If you'd like to reach our program today, a couple of ways to do that. Go online, of course, and email me at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That's bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And the other option is giving me a telephone call. I issued the challenge in the last segment of the program, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. And, of course, always willing to take your calls. Doesn't mean I'm going to listen to much of that, but, always willing to take a telephone call or two while we're on the air. In fact, I'm going to grab a caller here, just snare the call coming in, and tell you you're on air. You're up next.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for talking about the drug dealers. These drug dealers are so vicious that they get young women hooked on drugs, and then if they're pregnant, the baby absorbs the drugs, and when the baby is delivered and the umbilical cord is cut, the kid is thrashing around because of the being addicted to drugs.
Yeah, and I thank you for the call. The other aspect of that is, too, is that these fumes from cooking methamphetamine will cause brain damage, especially in young children. And then what? What's the result of that? And these fumes don't always stay confined to just one spot. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. No, I guess not. 736-0300. That's 736-0300. It is not a pretty thing. And this notion that, yeah, but he's such a nice guy. It is not a pretty thing. It is. You are leading people down the path to destruction. It is in that sense, if you're a religious person, it is satanic to be involved in that type of, these are the same people who refer to undocumented immigrants when they're talking about illegal aliens. My old neighbor was not an undocumented pharmacist. You got that? If he's convicted, I'll call him right out. He's a convicted dope dealer if that happens. Now, as I said earlier, he'll get better. I think that he's got the personality type that he'll bounce back. In fact, he may be when he gets out, he may be the one guy who I think will be the strongest voice against this type of stuff. But I'm telling you at the moment, it's not good. And people have to understand that. 837, 27. Going to warm up probably to about 38 before the day is over. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Good morning, Bill.
Morning.
I just wanted you to know that it's not only the poor and those that cannot find jobs. We had a family member who was a pharmacist. He had his own drugstore. He was well liked in his community, a pillar of the community, and the story goes on. There were 6 children. It went from taking the drugs to destroying his family. The oldest, which was 17 at the time, he walked away, leaving his family destitute. And down the road, all the years later, he never got rid of the drug problem. Finally, he was in such bad shape that one of his daughters finally took him in with her 6 children. And all of a sudden, after 6 months in their home, the daughter's going, I can't figure out what's wrong with his room. It smells so bad. I can't get rid of the odor. Make a long story short, he eventually killed himself with too many drugs. And he was an intelligent person. But look at the damage that was done.
Right. Yeah, and thank you for the call. Addiction is a terrible, terrible thing. I have a very close friend who's just lost his potentially, he was going to settle down and get married to this wonderful young woman. And she had an issue when she was younger, but she was clean and sober for many, many years, and then she had a relapse in August. And then when she came back out of treatment, she said sayonara. And she disappeared with a friend who was involved in the drug culture. It's gut-wrenching. And people have terrible addictions. It's an illness. When you're feeding those addictions, though, which that was my criticism earlier, when you're feeding those addictions of other people, you're preying on that. You're preying on the fact that they have demons they can't always control. To me, how do you defend someone who's doing that, who's making a buck because they're taking advantage of you in that sense and helping you ruin your life and ruin the lives of those people around you? Again, this is not defensible. This is, I'm sorry, you cannot defend a dope dealer. 20 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 26.